just talking a little bit about networking, and we're going to have a couple more sessions. And first of all, how did everybody find the last panel discussion? Is that helpful?
Yep.
Okay, great. So we're going to go through a session now with PayPal-X. And I've been talking about that a bunch this morning. One of the reasons that I am so big on it is that I think it can take great ideas and give you a great business model. And for me, we'll talk a little bit later about appbackr, the application that we've developed. When I go and talk to investors, the fact that I'm attached to PayPal, besides getting some benefit of being part of or being affiliated in some way with a great company, it takes the question of business model off the table. And people see that there's a way to get money right away. And we don't have time right now to do it, but we'll discuss some of it over lunch. There are a lot of great ideas, and I'm sure out amongst you. And having something that allows you to get immediate monetization is what makes it compelling for investors. So we're very fortunate to have Praveen Alaveli here today, who is the developer evangelist for PayPal, and he's going to talk about some of the tools and resources that are available to each of us, and I hope you find it a useful and informative presentation. For me, it changed my business around 180 degrees. So, Praveen, thank you.
Thanks, Trevor. Hi, everyone. I'm Praveen. I work as a developer evangelist, more emphasis on the developer side. I tend to get too technical in my presentations, so stop me whenever you have any question or anything. Or at the end, we can do a few questions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the whole PayPal X is. People might be what is this X after PayPal? I'll try to explain what PayPal X is all about and the new platform and some APIs and functionality that it provides that will help you monetize your applications. And also talk a very little bit about how you can use the APIs, and if you have time, we can do a couple of questions at the end. So PayPal X, it's all really about opening up our platform. So PayPal has this payments platform for years now, started since '99, and it has gone through several different phases. But we've never really opened up the platform in a way that developers can use it in whichever way they want to. So far, we have had products like Express Checkout and website payment gateways and all kinds of things, but they are all really trying to address specific use cases. With the new platform, the power is in your hands now. You can do payments in whichever format you want to do. It kind of enables different kinds of monetization models. As I mentioned a few here, you can do subscriptions, pay as you go. Most of the popular ones in the Web 2.0 world that you might have seen or been using. All those things are possible with the PayPal X platform. And also another big thing to note here is it's really a global payments platform. It's no longer just for the US market. It's available in over 190 countries in over 26, I think is the number, 26 different currencies. So it's really a true global payments platform. There are other platforms out there, but no one has a global platform like PayPal X. The one thing that would probably come to mind is why X. As most of the developers know, X is a very common way of representing a variable in most of the programming languages. The first thing that we use whenever we are trying to create a variable in our program, in Java or C++, C, whatever, X is the first variable name that we always use. So fortunately, X.com was a domain that's owned by PayPal, and we thought that's the way we can actually emphasize that PayPal X is really a variable, something that you can use in whichever format that you want to use. So PayPal, the X.com is really where our developer portal is. You can find tons of information about our APIs, sample apps, the great ideas that you can even check and see what's the next big thing that's going to come out based on payments. Lots of blogs, not just PayPal blogs, but even every developer who can create an account on X.com can blog on X.com. We'll keep you updated with industry news, the simple steps to get started, forums, plenty of info, plenty of useful info that every developer can make quick list of things that you can find on x.com. I don't know if you guys can see this one. X.com, as I said, was the original domain that was founded as an internet banking system back in '99, and it was actually merged with Confinity in 2000, and they both evolved as PayPal.com in 2001. And obviously, PayPal.com makes more sense for consumers to send money, not X.com, right? But X.com was a domain that we had for a long time, and we are revamping it now as a way to make it as a developer portal. So going back to the PayPal X platform, as I said, it's all about payments, enabling payments in different formats. You can literally pay anyone or receive from anyone. Anyone here could be any person or entity, as long as it's have an email address or a phone number. That's how flexible it is. It provides a lot of account management functionalities and tools, identity, permissions, accounts, all kinds of information that are useful when you're dealing with payments and user information on your web application or your iPhone application. Doesn't really matter. And it also provides a lot of tools on payment information, the transactions that you're making through your applications using our APIs. So we provide a lot of tools so you can go back and check the transactions going through your applications, the money that's moved, whether if there are any refunds, any chargebacks happening, all kinds of powerful tools are available to you through the APIs. And I said anyone could mean anything literally. When you talk about payments, the most common terminology that we use is a sender and a receiver. I'm going to turn this off. It has a trigger feed here that's distracting me. Sorry. Twitter is too distracted. When I say it's different kinds of senders and receivers, it really depends on the use case that you're building your application for. If you're building a gaming application, it could be the actual game provider is a receiver, and the player is really the one who's paying for it. If you're building an enterprise application, it could be an employee-employer, different kinds of things. Even when it comes to the pure financing, it could be the investor and the developer, or a lender and a borrower. All kinds of players, all kinds of entities can be supported through the payments platform. You as a developer, you really pick the terms that you really make sense for you, that they really make sense for your application. You don't have to really tie down to the terminology that much. And the payments platform really introduces these three concepts. As I said, the sender and the receiver, the most common ones. The API caller is the one that really what your application is really doing. When your application is provisioning payments for a sender to send money to a receiver, the API caller, the application is the one that's really making the API calls to make that happen. So we call it as an API caller. And typically an API caller would also have a PayPal business account, because in some cases the API caller or the application itself might be taking a cut out of the transaction. So for that reason, the API caller would also have a PayPal account. But these are the three entities in the PayPal X platform. So whenever you're building any application, you're really the application, the API caller. But in some cases, your application could be for an enterprise, and in case of an enterprise, the sender is really the API, could be the real application API caller too. In the same way, when you're building an application for a large merchant, a merchant could itself be the receiver and the API caller too. So things are very flexible. You can change it in the way you want. The PayPal X APIs. The first API, the most popular one, as part of the PayPal X platform, is the Adaptive Payments API. This is the API that appbackr uses, Cheetah uses. You're going to hear about Cheetah in the next panel. There are plenty of applications out there which use Adaptive Payments APIs to provision payments in various different formats. But at the core, the Payments API enables APIs that enables you to send money from one receiver to one sender to one receiver, or one sender to multiple receivers. That's what we call as parallel and chain payments, or split payments. It also provides APIs that allow you to do pre-approvals, just like how the authorizations work in the credit card networks. In the same way, the Adaptive Payments APIs let you get a pre-approval from a user, which you can use to charge money or make a payment on behalf of the user in a future time. when I say you, it's really your application that's actually doing the work. And for send money, there are also implicit send monies, which are the cases where you are really the sender, and the money is coming out of your own account. So this is the case for an enterprise application where an employer might be doing payroll, sending money to all his employees. In that case, there is no real authorization required because the sender himself is making the transactions. In all other cases, when a money is moved from a sender to a receiver, the sender authorizes the payment. That happens through PayPal. So everything is still in the control of user, still secure, and user always has a chance to go back to his account and cancel a payment if he doesn't want that to happen. Send money, as I said, it's the most basic simple API, sending money from one merchant, one sender to one receiver. Lots of use cases for it. I'll go through a few use cases later on, but send money is the most simplest API of all. Pre-approved payments is, as I said, the way you get approval from a user. You make a payment. You want to enable the user to make a payment to a subscription, for example, and the payment doesn't really happen until the end of the month. But you want to get a pre-approval from the user at the start of the month saying, hey, every month I'm letting this application to charge me $10 or $1. It could be even micro payments, doesn't really matter. And the user will approve it, and then you get a pre-approval key, and then using that approval key at the end of every month, you charge the user's account. The parallel payments, this is the cool new functionality that the PayPal X platform actually enables. The parallel payments is a way where you're no longer sending money from one sender to one receiver. You can actually send money from one sender to multiple receivers. Think of marketplaces where there are multiple merchants selling their products through marketplace. And when a user, in the traditional marketplaces, you always pay money to the marketplace provider. And when at the end of the month or whatever their period is, the marketplace provider settles the payments with their merchants behind the scenes, painful. With the parallel payments, the marketplace provider can make that happen seamlessly, automatically. When a user buys 3 different products from 3 different merchants all through the same marketplace, the PayPal X payments platform makes it possible that the payments happen at the real time. When the user pays the money, the marketplace can say, hey, the actual receivers are these 3 merchants, send the money over there. And that can happen as seamlessly as possible, and everything is transparent. Even the merchants know who's sending the money and who's taking the money out of the cards, and the user knows who's paying the money to. So no longer there's any concerns about what's happening to my payment, who is responsible for the refunds and all those kinds of things. The one important aspect of parallel payments is, as I said, the sender knows where the money is going. So when he goes back to his account, he would see that when I paid $100 through a marketplace, the actual receivers are the ones who actually got the money and how much money they received. The second type of parallel split payments is called the chain payments. This is the case where there's always one primary receiver who actually is the one that's visible to the sender as the guy who received the money. But again, the money transfer happens seamlessly, automatically behind the scenes. The perfect use case for this is 2 of us can write a book, but we are not in a position to print the book and sell it online. So we can sign up for a publicist, and in that case, when a user buys the book from the publicist, he really knows that he's buying it from publicist. Amazon.com is a good example. So user is always knows that he's buying book from Amazon.com, not from the actual book writers, right? But behind the scenes, the money can flow automatically to the book authors because they are the ones who actually wrote the book and getting the real cut out of the actual transaction. In this case, whoever is publishing the book and publishing the book and shipping the book, he will appear as the receiver of the money in the user's account. And when a user wants to refund the book or request for refund of the money, he always goes to the primary receiver. And PayPal APIs enable even the refunds to be automatic. You can combine parallel and pre-approval. So in some cases, as in a blog or a premium content website that you're building, or an application that lets people to buy games from different different game providers, you can get the pre-approval from the user if the payments are micro payments. and you don't want the user to go through approvals every time when he's playing the game as part of the game. When he jumps from one level to the next level, changes the game. So you can get the pre-approval from the user beforehand, and then during the runtime, when the user selects a game, you can automatically make a payment to those providers. In the same way, you can combine the chain payments and pre-approvals. But you cannot really combine parallel and chain because we kind of block it. The main reason for it is it adds complexity. When you create when you combine the parallel and chain payments, the problem comes in when it comes to the chargebacks and refunds. How do you know who do you go back to request the money? When it's a chain payment, you go to the primary receiver to request the money back, and behind the scenes, the primary receiver goes to the secondary receivers. But if one of the secondary receivers is not the real secondary receiver, but is transferring the money to multiple other receivers, or third receivers or fourth receivers, it makes the life of both PayPal and you as a developer and your application makes a mess. So we intentionally logged it to make it much more simple, so you don't have to worry about it. But at the same time, you can always do parallel and chain in the same application, not together, but you can always make them separate transactions. A few use cases, as I said before, you can use the simple send money to send money from any one person to any receiver. For example, in the social networking case, you can have a sample app, a simple application that runs on Twitter platform, on Facebook application, Facebook platform, where you basically enable anybody to send money to any of his friends. TwitPay is a good example if you guys have not used it. It's a simple way of sending money to your friend on Twitter. Gaming is another simple example for making transactions from sender to receiver. So in this game, in this use case, you as a developer, you build the game and you let the user pay for the game. Very simple use case. It could be micropayments. Anything less than $10 could be qualified as a micropayment. You get a better transaction fee compared to the regular transaction fee. And then in most cases, end users are much more comfortable in micropayments than big payments anyway. In the other cases where you might be building a gaming platform, or it could be a publishing platform, it could be anything, where you are enabling some other people to sell stuff through your platform, in which case you can use a parallel payment or a chain payment in this case. You take your cut because you're providing the platform, and then you provide the rest of the amount to the actual providers behind the scenes. The disbursements are a good example for parallel payments. As I said before, an employee paying salary to his employees, that's a great way of doing parallel payments. Distributed referral is another use case for for chain payments, where a publicist, for example, is a good example, where he is getting the transaction amount for the book that a user bought, and then he sends the rest of the money to the secondary receivers, who could be the actual book authors or someone else. Rent payments is another good example for a chain payment. It could be more than one secondary receiver. So as a homeowner, I can give the rental property management to a property management provider. The property management people, they are the one who receive the money every month as your rent. But behind the scenes, they can automate the transfer to your owner's account. So those kinds of things are possible with chain and parallel payments. To quickly walk through the web flow and how it looks like from a developer perspective, or even from a end user perspective. Let's take that sample app, the rental application example. Let's say there are rental property manager, and then he needs to transfer money to the owner, and maybe the guy who's managing taking the maintenance care of the something in the house, like a air conditioner AC unit. So in this case, a sender will say, I want to pay my rent. The rental application will say, will make a pay API call to the PayPalX platform. The pay API call will specify all the information about the sender's email, like who is the sender who's actually paying the money, the currency, the amount, the receivers of the amount. In this case, since there are two receivers, there's a primary receiver and the secondary receiver. And once the request is received by PayPal, PayPal returns back a pay key, which is like a transactional token. And the rental application takes the transactional token, the pay key, and it sends the user to PayPal for authorization. So it redirects the user in the browser with that pay key to PayPal. PayPal presents the authorization screen to the user. User logs in and says, yes, I want to pay these two guys $1,000 or whatever the amount is. And then the actual transaction happens behind the scenes. So the money gets transferred from the sender to the primary receiver and automatically to the secondary receivers. So in this case, the primary receiver is a rental property manager. He takes his cut, and then the rest of the money goes to the actual owner and some other maintenance guy. Everything can happen seamlessly. All your application doing at this point is making the API call. And then it returns the user back to PayPal, back to the rental application. And behind the scenes, as soon as the money gets transferred into the accounts, payment notifications get sent to the receivers. So as an owner, I get a notification saying, hey, you received your monthly payment. So your application don't have to do anything. And in the same way, the maintenance guy will also get a notification saying, hey, you received money from this guy through this application. That's how simple it is.
Handle the conversion between the different currencies where you get the conversion rate?
There is a currency conversion API. That will give you the rates. That will give the application some idea on what to present to the user, like the actual amount of money that's being transferred.
If you go back to transaction, you have to get the currency conversion rate to take the transaction, correct?
That's a good question. I need to find out. But I'm sure it is the rate that's for the actual transaction happen.
Question was regarding the transaction fees for microfinance payments. What are the criteria for getting those transaction fees compared to the regular?
Anything less than $10 will qualify for micropayments. That's basically the rule of thumb.
And then you take a percentage of that?
Yeah, so the usual micropayments transaction fee is 5% and 5 cents. So anything less than $10, it makes sense. Anything over $10, 5% and 5 cents doesn't make sense. So the usual transaction fee rate is 2.9% and 30 cents. That's the most common one, but based on your transactions, the transaction fee goes up.
Can you describe how this process is different with the new PayPal API versus using a regular PayPal? I mean, from a sender perspective, it seems the same.
It is the same. From the sender perspective, it is the same. That's the beauty of it. But it's enabling applications to do a lot more customized experience to the user.
The other application.
The other applications. Yeah. I mean, if you're building a website and all you're doing is e-commerce, Express Checkout makes perfect sense. You don't have to worry about anything more than that. But if you're building an iPhone application or Android application or some gaming application, any Web 2.0-ish kind of applications, new APIs make sense because it gives you more flexibility and control.
Most major banks provide free online payment services. What's your advantage compared to the bank's application?
So the way it works is that in most cases, the banks provide free payment service as long as it's coming from your bank account, right? So PayPal, it works in the same way. There is no fee that the sender pays, and when as a merchant, whoever is the business entity who is receiving the money, he always pays the money. That's the same case even in case of a bank. If you are holding a merchant account with a bank, you're still paying a transaction fee on that. It's always the sender who gets the benefit of not paying anything if he's paying through his bank account or PayPal balance. So it works in the same way as in any other regular bank too, like bill pay, for example.
Say I were to chain payments and then somebody returns a product, is there some mechanism to return those funds?
There is an API called Refund API. You make the call,
go all the way down the
it
channel.
goes all the way down back.
Okay.
Yeah. The next set of APIs is the Adaptive Accounts API. It's really a programmatic way of creating PayPal accounts. One of the big concerns that most of the applications have, or even the websites have, is when I send the user to PayPal for authorization, what if he doesn't have a PayPal account? Am I going to lose the user? What happens if he bails out from there? So to help in the problem, to improve the user experience, to increase the conversion rate, what the adaptive accounts provides is it lets you create a PayPal account behind the scenes for the user, and then send the user to PayPal saying you're all set up on PayPal. You don't really have to do anything other than creating your password and security questions. So when a user comes to your application and tries to pay for something, in most cases your applications already have user data. Most of the social networks, for example, have more information than any other website that the user has accounts here. In which case they can make it a more seamless, streamlined experience for the user by feeding in all the data to PayPal behind the scenes, and then send the user in the browser to PayPal, and PayPal will say everything is already set up. You just select your password and your security questions, and you're all set, and add your funding sources and all those things. To give you a quick overview, this is how it works. An application, in this case, an application caller or an API caller, he offers the user to create a PayPal account for him. So if he already has all the data, user says yes, let's do it. Then the application sends an account creation request to PayPal. PayPal creates an inactive. So this is an important aspect. PayPal creates an account, but it's marked as inactive. So the account is not usable yet. And then it sends the user back to application. Application sends the user to PayPal again. Again, in this case, they get a token, and they pass the user to PayPal with the token. So PayPal knows which user it's really dealing with, and user chooses his password and account security questions. And when it's done, the user gets sent back to the application. During this process, once this is done, the application knows that user now has a PayPal account, so now it can make a Pay API call without worrying that it's going to lose the user or user not going to have a PayPal account. So it improves the conversion rate. Different use cases come up for adaptive accounts. I mean, in case of payroll, and if a new employee is signing up, your company can automatically create a PayPal account for him because most of the companies already have all the user info. Marketplace, as part of the onboarding, you can actually not only create a seller account, but when a merchant signs up on your marketplace, you can actually create a merchant account for him on PayPal. So when he starts receiving money, everything automatically happens. Social media, as I said, in most of the social networks already have a lot of user data, and there's no point in making the user re-enter all that information again. What's coming up?
So several times you've mentioned an example of payroll. Why would a business want to use this for their payroll as opposed to direct deposit or writing checks?
Different reasons. I mean, big merchants obviously can do it, but smaller, big enterprises, smaller SMB kind of merchants or enterprises, they might not have enough resources to actually do those kinds of things, to go through a payroll department and have a payroll provider like ADP or ProBusiness and those kinds of things. This makes it much more simpler. Maybe, so for big enterprises,
you would have to pay 2.9% fee on top of that, right?
Yeah.
That's a tough one for me to swallow.
Maybe the best other example is paying affiliate fees.
All right.
Maybe I've used the wrong example, but there are some things that qualify actually. We are launching a new transaction fee plans for the services vertical, which have been traditionally pretty heavily dominated by cash and checks. The new pricing plan will come out pretty soon. That will provide much more lower transaction fees.
Okay.
What's new things that are coming up in the adaptive accounts is you can even add a funding source. Like if your application already has user's credit card, you can now actually throw that credit card into PayPal and you don't have to worry about PCI compliance, those kinds of things in the long term anymore. We are also going to launch an API so you can get the verification status of the account. So when you get a user logged in through your application, you can actually find out if he's a verified PayPal user or not.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about PCI compliance, which is a real headache?
Uh,
Or how it avoids it. I mean, I don't need to hear how PCI works, but
Okay, that's true. I'll actually explain that in the last slide. And other aspects of the thing that PayPal X platform provides are the identity services. The OpenID and InfoGap provider are in beta now. You can actually try it out by going to paypal-ids.com. But we also have an authentication service that you can use to authenticate users into your application. You no longer need to manage user IDs and passwords. So in that way, when a user signs in through PayPal, you not only know that he is a real user, but you also know that he has some payment information associated with them on PayPal side. The authentication service API also gives you first name, last name, and email address, so you can use that for communication purpose on your application. The instant payment notification.
Can I use the PayPal user login information to have PayPal manage that account information, and when the user logs into PayPal, they can come to my website, and then I don't have to worry about setting up accounts and passwords?
Exactly, yeah. And PayPal will give you back a unique identifier for the user, a persistent handle that can be used to store your application info. You don't have to store any user info anymore. Instant payment notifications are a great feature that everyone loves. This is the way you get an instant notification whenever a payment happens. So you no longer worry about going back to log into PayPal, check your account books, and all that stuff anymore. You can automate all the processing. The reporting, there are a lot of transaction search and details APIs, so when a user comes back to your application and says, hey, I've paid you, but I never received the actual product or game, you can make a transaction search on PayPal and make sure that they really made the money payment to you, and based on that you can do certain other things. There are XML reporting APIs, and there's also website reporting. You can go to paypal.com and you can actually download your files in CSV format and XML format that you can use for offline processing. PayPal APIs are pretty flexible, and there are multiple protocol bindings that are available in formats. The SOAP is the most common one that's used, but it's a little heavy on the implementation side. But there are also the MVP. MVP is the name value pair format, which is like the usual web form URL encode format. And JSON and XML formats are also available, so that makes the implementation much more easy and simple. There are tons of SDKs and toolkits available on X.com. All our SDKs are open source, so when you download the SDK, you actually get the source code with that too. There are community contributions to all the Ruby on Rails ones are really built by the community. We just launched the Apex toolkit for Post.com, so if you're building anything on Salesforce platform, you can actually use the PayPal APIs right from there. The last one is the mobile embedded payments. This is actually a very great library that we are still in private beta, but it will be in public beta by end of April. This lets you to enable payments inside your iPhone app without even losing the user out of your application. So all the payment happens in context. You no longer need to pop up the Safari browser, let the user go through the payment authorization, and when the user comes back, try to reestablish the context and let the user go through the transactions anymore. All the payments happen inside your application. This is a sample application where your gaming application might be selling a t-shirt with your brand on it, like Farmville t-shirt, for example. User can buy it right inside the game. They don't have to leave the application. So these are all pretty simple and easy to use, but they are very powerful. The reason why I said it kind of helps a little bit on the PCI compliance side is because you no longer have to show the payment information, and in some cases you no longer have to even collect the payment information anymore because the user payment information is stored on PayPal side. It doesn't get you completely out of it. You still have to make sure you're secure enough because ultimately your API credentials, your pay keys, they're also important. So don't think that you are completely off of security and PCI compliance, but in most cases it helps you. You don't have to worry about paying some guy to do a complete PCI analysis of your whole infrastructure. It's global reach, over 190 countries, 24 currencies, so you don't have to worry about when you're launching in Asia or Europe, do I have to change the payment method or payment platform that I'm using? Once you do it, it's all done. If you have any other questions or any feedback, please feel free to let me know. And as I said here, we announced 30% of our roadmap, PayPal X roadmap is actually based on your feedback. If there is any functionality that's missing, please let us know and we'll actually try to get it done.
So Praveen, if you're going international with this and you're right at the borderline of the microtransactions, it's like it's $10 and then the currency fluctuates and suddenly it's $10.02, what kind of things happen? Is there Do you provide a little leeway there for currency fluctuation, or?
That's a good question. I have no answer for it. I'll find out. I'll let you know.
Do you have plugins for NetBeans or Eclipse?
Actually, currently no. We are actually thinking of one for Eclipse, but the SDK is so simple. And in most cases, you don't really create a PayPal application, so it doesn't really make that much sense.
If someone wanted to start preparing for the MEP, do you have some things available already for the developers to?
Yes, actually, if you go to x.com, you'll find the info. All you have to do is send a mail saying you want to try the beta, and you'll get a library, and you can actually start playing. I'm sorry?
Is the PowerPoint presentation available?
It will be on SlideShare, and I'll put it on I'll tweet it on Twitter and put it on x.com.
When you're paying employees, is there a service substitute for payroll service?
So PayPal by
Paying their salary, are you accounting for all the different SDI and unemployment insurance and
PayPal by itself doesn't provide any payroll kind of applications. We are really providing the APIs, the medium for people to do it. Do we have time?
Just one more,
One
yeah.
more time.
Since you're dealing with financial transactions, does PayPal act as a certificate authority, and you are revoking those certificates and monitoring the lifespan of those so that there's no faulty transactions with somebody else's certificates?
You mean with respect to the FSL certificate?
Trust, yes.
So PayPal itself doesn't act as a CA, certificate authority. You as an application developer, you need to get your own certificates. We issue API credentials for developers to make calls to PayPal, and if we feel that those credentials are compromised, we actually revoke them. We actually let the developer know and we revoke them. But that's about it. We don't really try to go and verify the website's security.
Praveen, thank you very,
Thank you.
very much. There may be some more questions. I don't know if you need to be here for a few minutes.
I will be here till after lunch.
Okay, great. And the online tools, PayPalX, hashtag, and going to x.com, a lot of resources there, and I've just found a lot of community, a lot of answers to questions. So we're going to bring up thank you very much. We're going to go ahead and bring up our next panel, which is on the future of pure financing. So this panel is going to